Defense attorneys say they're not giving up after a jury reached a partial verdict in the high-profile murder trial surrounding the SUV full of teenagers and their loud music. The loud music murder trial, it's been dubbed. The judge declared a mistrial on the biggest charge of them all, murder in the first degree, after jurors failed to reach a verdict. They just couldn't come to a conclusion. But they did convict Michael Dunn on 3 counts of attempted murder for shooting at that SUV.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of attempted second-degree murder, a lesser-included offense. We find that the defendant discharged a firearm during the commission of the offense. It
all happened back in 2012 outside a convenience store in Jacksonville. Dunn admitted that he shot and killed 17-year-old Jordan Davis, but he claimed it was all in self-defense. He said he thought he saw a shotgun, even though police never found a weapon, and even though Dunn's fiancée testified that he never mentioned a gun to her at all. After the shooting, Michael Dunn, famously now, drove the 3 miles to his motel, made a cocktail for his wife and for his girlfriend and himself, ordered a pizza, took the dog out for a walk, went to sleep, woke up the next day, drove 2.5 hours to his home in Brevard, and then contacted police. But he did not call 911 then or ever, and never called an official who was in charge of anything. Now, after 4 days and 32 hours of deliberation, a hung jury on the murder charge. But Dunn faces a minimum of 60 years in prison on the attempted murder convictions. Actually, it's 20 years per count, but if they run them consecutively instead of concurrently, then it would be 60 years, and that's the widespread thought, that they're not going to sentence him until the spring. His attorneys say they do plan to appeal, and prosecutors say they plan to retry him for murder. Pilar Prenz is a criminal defense attorney. Did you watch this thing along the way? The trial?
Part of it, of course. I've paid much more attention to what's been happening now that it's over.
Yeah, well,
what's going to happen next.
I have to admit, I watched it. I watched a lot of it. When I wasn't here, I was watching that dang thing. And I'm not going to say how I felt like it should go one way or the other, but it was interesting that 32 hours later, after all the evidence they had seen, that they couldn't come to a conclusion one way or the other.
That's right. They really struggled. And it's interesting because they were able to come to the counts, multiple counts on attempted murder, as well as shooting into these teenagers' vehicle. But this jury really struggled with what to do about this first-degree murder charge.
And that's what was so significant. Now, attempted murder, if he shot up a vehicle, and the 3 people with whom he's charged of attempted murder, by all accounts, did not threaten him with anything.
Right.
But the one person did. So it would appear that what the jury was leaning on here was this stand your ground claim. He did feel his life was being threatened, therefore he had the right to retaliate, and he was found guilty of nothing.
There's multiple thoughts on it.
Yeah.
And one of them is that, and even though, remember, just like the Zimmerman case, they didn't in this case actually pursue stand your ground, but when the judge gives the jury the instructions, they give instructions that almost sound like they are saying it. They're saying if you find, because it's a self-defense, if you find that he had the right, he didn't have to retreat. So it sounds like stand your ground is kind of built into this case, even though they didn't pursue it. But yet, the other thing is premeditation. This is an issue, and it goes back to what lawyers learn in law school. And juries, I think, get confused by it. What is premeditation? Because it doesn't have to be, did he think about it for hours? Was there this master plan? Premeditation can be formed in a second. But it could be the jury got confused. It's really a reason why they need to poll the jurors and find out what they were thinking.
In many parts of the country, in fact, the vast majority, states in different parts of the country, the states say you have a duty, if you can, to retreat and end this conflict. But in Florida, in the infinite wisdom that is the Florida judicial system, now in Florida they say, if you feel like you might be in danger or real bodily harm, you can just go at them and you can kill them.
Well, we're getting a lot of attention nationwide, right?
Yeah,
in the state of Florida with these cases, especially back to back. But it is scary. And obviously the legislature in Florida had a reason for having this law. But I do think that there's a great danger that anybody who is being charged with murder could say, I felt threatened.
The elephant in the room here is this is a bunch of black kids at a convenience store where the guy's girlfriend said, I hate that thug music, and the thug word is being used, and he says to somebody in another car, turn your music down, and then the allegation is that they mouthed at him some bad words, and he said, you're not going to talk to me like that, and bang, bang, bang. That's what witnesses have said during this thing. Of course, he has a completely different story, and we've laid that out specifically.
Right.
But to ignore the fact that there are allegations of racism and racial-motivated activities here would be to ignore the elephant in the room.
It would be. You can't ignore it. But again, we don't know what the jury was thinking.
We don't.
And like you pointed out, 32 hours of deliberation, and they couldn't come up with a result.
Should they retry this? He's going away for the rest of his life by all accounts.
Well, we think so. I mean, if, as you mentioned just now, if they run the term consecutively, then yes, he's 47 years old, so effectively a 60-year sentence is a life sentence for him. I think from a pragmatic standpoint, the prosecutor really has to look at, does it make sense for the taxpayers' dollars to retry him on the issue?
Yeah, the prosecutor who was in charge at that time said yes. If I'm the parents, I probably feel the same way. But anyway. Pilar, good to see you.
You too.